Fight fans, this is Brandon with BNBoxingNews. I just want to take a moment to discuss the aftermath of the Garcia Porter fight this past weekend, as well as discuss the future of the welterweight division and how I see things playing out. So let's start recapping the fight. I thought it was a very close fight. Both fighters had a very good game plan. Their coaches, Angel Garcia and Kenny Porter, had very solid strategies and game plans for their sons to execute, and both did a great job. I had scored the fight a draw, but if you gave it to Danny or Sean in a close decision, I can't argue that. So congratulations to both fighters. Congratulations to Sean Porter, the new WBC welterweight champion. So where does that leave us now? Well, with this decision of Sean Porter winning, this is going to have a domino effect in the welterweight division with a number of things happening. So let's start with just thinking about Sean Porter, right, and what's next. Obviously, we saw Errol Spence right there in the ring calling him out after the fight in the press conference, speaking to, that this is the fight that is next. But let's think about this, right? Spence is supposed to fight later on this year. Porter, we probably won't see him till 2019, the first quarter of 2019. So realistically, this fight, Spence versus Porter, will not happen until the second half of 2019 at the earliest. What does this mean for Mikey Garcia at 147? He had been chasing Spence, but I don't see Spence now going to fight Garcia knowing that he has a fight with Porter coming up. And if you think about it from a credit perspective, right? How much credit will Spence get for beating Garcia? The only thing that he can benefit from taking this Garcia fight is the money, right? Which it was being discussed that this could be potentially a pay-per-view fight between Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia. But I just don't see that happening, knowing that at the welterweight, with the fighters that are there now, I don't see where Spence and Garcia can happen right now. Not before Spence and Porter fight. So where does that leave Mikey Garcia? Well, at 135, it's about to be two people with all the belts at 135. One of them is Mikey Garcia, and then we'll find out what happens between Lomachenko and Pedraza in December when they fight. And then we'll have two belt holders at 135. Well, if you think about Tank, right? Tank said, Tevin Farmer get a belt. If you don't get a belt, then he going to 135. Well, Farmer has a belt, but he's at 130. He's aligned with Eddie Hearn and maybe not Matchroom. He's being co-promoted between Matchroom and his current promoter, Lou DiBella. So I don't see that fight happening. Not with Al Heyman, Showtime, Fox. They have their fighters. I don't see that fight happening right now. So could Tank go up to 135 if he wants a belt? It's only two people at 135 with the belts, probably after December, and that's more likely going to be Lomachenko and Mikey Garcia. So back to welterweights though. We heard Spence call out Terence Crawford. Let me first off saying that I don't think any of these fighters are afraid of the other. I don't think anybody's ducking one another. But the politics of boxing does have to play itself out. Terence Crawford signed to Top Rank, aligned with ESPN. Errol Spence, Al Heyman fighter, aligned with Showtime and Fox. So there's a lot of things that has to happen, a lot of hurdles that has to be overcome for this fight to even happen. And if you think about this, right, the biggest fight in boxing always takes time. Take Mayweather Pacquiao. That fight took, really, if you look at it if you really look at it, it almost took 7 or 8 years for that fight to be really made. We started talking about it early after Pacquiao beat De La Hoya, then he went on to beat Hatton, and then the discussions of the fight started happening more and more as he moved up to welterweight. But that fight, and that was the biggest fight of all time. Most pay-per-views, revenue, Mayweather Pacquiao. So if that fight takes 7 to 8 years to make, how long do you think it's gonna take? And think about the money that was involved in that fight. How long do you think it's gonna take before we see Errol Spence and Terence Crawford in the ring? I think it's gonna take a little bit of time. Think about the matchups that PBC can make, Al Haymon fighters can make just in the welterweight division, right? So we got Porter, Spence that's gonna fight. What about Danny Garcia? Could he get a match maybe second half of the year, a rematch with maybe Keith Thurman, assuming Thurman comes back, get a tune-up or two, and maybe wants to get a little bit more active, and maybe the winner out of Thurman Garcia faces the winner out of Spence and Porter, or maybe since Danny took this loss, could ESPN Top Rank make a really aggressive offer to Danny that might convince him to cross the other side of the street? And we could talk about being on the wrong side of the street or whatnot, but if you think about it, it's really the wrong side of the opposite side of the highway, because it's a lot of traffic, and the traffic is the politics of boxing that we got to get through and overcome. So it'd be interesting to see which premier Al Haymon fighter gets in the ring with Crawford first. But I don't see it being Spence right now, and I don't see that fight happening. Definitely not in 2019, maybe 2020, maybe 2 years from now, 2021. So it's just a lot of possibilities, a lot of things that can happen. The winner of Spence and Porter will probably end up facing Keith Thurman down the line, or once again the winner between maybe a rematch of Thurman Garcia. Then of course with these sanctioning bodies, you got mandatories. Ugas, who was on the undercard, is now in a position to be the WBC mandatory for the title. So he might be looked at as a stay busy fight until we can see some of these big fights. Spence has already made his title defense, his mandatory title defense, so he has a voluntary that's coming up, and maybe he faces someone like a Berto or somebody like that. But it'll be interesting to see how things play out over this next year in the welterweight division. I'm excited. Hopefully you are. But it looks to see either way, we have some great fights coming up. Let me know what you think here at BNBoxing News.